Who's your emergency contact? Who should we notify in the case of death? Welcome to the USP, where I spent the last 2+ decades of my life. For our next few episodes, I want to bring you guys a story that I want to pivot to. Eventually, once I finish taking you guys through the course of my time, I want to build an interview people that I know that's come home and rebuilt their lives and share their story with you. The guy that I'm sharing the story with at this time, I'm not able to interview him because he's no longer with us. In 2019, my friend Rick Turner decided that he wasn't able to do the 40-year sentence that he was given and decided to hang himself in his cell. He's not the first person to have done that. Through the course of my bid, I met a lot of people that decide not to do, the life sentence, the 40, 50 years they were given, and found ways to escape that. Some people purposely overdose themselves on heroin so that they can move on. And other people put a rope around their neck and hang themselves off the bunk. My friend Bullet, in 2017, put a plastic bag over his head and a rope around his neck and hung himself off the bunk. It's hard to emphasize and convey the psychological effect that you're under when you're spending decades in this type of environment. I personally had a moment of darkness when I was in Victorville. When I was in Victorville, I was waiting on a response on one of my appeal. My motion, I filed a motion for ineffective assistance of counsel. And to be able to get that into the court, I had to prove 5 things. There was like a 5, I think they call it a stress test to see if you qualify for the courts to hear you. And I met those burdens in my appeal, in my motion. I met those burdens. But, the judge had an impression of me. She had an opinion of me. And she had already told me in so many words before I left her courtroom when I got sentenced that if she was able to give me more time, she would. The 26 years that she was handcuffed to give me wasn't satisfactory to her. So, of course, every time I filed a motion, she would just deny it and make me go through the appellate process, through the appellate court, and so on and so forth. Through the course of my bid, countless motions, and I'm not filing frivolous motion. I'm waiting for the law to change or new rulings that come down from the Supreme Court or the federal court to decide if I qualify and I can use those case laws to help my motion. So every motion that I file has countless other case laws that support my cause. Because I'm not one of them dudes that are just trying to waste people's time, my time, holding on to some pipe dream. I like to, I pride myself in living in my reality. And, but anyway, at this particular time, the prosecutor was calling my lawyer, asking her, how would I feel if they gave me a deal for 15 years, 10 or 15 years. Now I already received this 26-year sentence. So any deal that I could get that's less than that 26, I'm trying to get it. So when I was talking to my lawyer, Deirdre Gorman, she's like, well, we're just waiting for the judge to set an evidentiary hearing where both sides can present their case. But the prosecutor already told my attorney that they don't want to go through the evidentiary hearing because I have a lot of evidence that they suppress. Nothing that shows my innocence or anything, because at the end of the day, I've already been convicted of this crime. So even though I've never admitted to it, we can all assume I'm guilty of the bank robbery. Let's just put that out there, right? My issue was the way the sentencing went, the evidence that they put into court that they shouldn't have not used, the lies, and all the different fucking fabricated statements. So it's going to expose them that these people, the prosecutor, weren't pursuing the truth, but just a conviction. You know, by this time, we can already see that the person that testified against me didn't go to prison. As soon as he got off the stand, he got in a van and was driven right to the halfway house. So when you're on the stand talking about the prosecutor never promised you a deal, it's a lie, because you're not cooperating out of the kindness and goodness of your heart. You're cooperating because it's understood that if you help the prosecutor is going to help you in return. But at trial, you know, the judge likes to ask, were you promised anything? Was there a deal given in exchange for your testimony? Oh, no, of course not. I didn't get any deal. Yeah, it's not in black and white. It's not written down somewhere I can submit it into the court showing that the reason this dude is cooperating is because he's going to get out his prison sentence. So they never write it down in black and white, but it's called meeting of the minds. The person in question and the prosecutor had an agreement. You help me, I help you. Nothing was specified, but at the end of the day, we both know, everybody knows, that once you testify, we're going to waive your prison sentence and let you go home because you're giving us somebody else that we consider a bigger fish. Right? So when my motion was denied, that was the first time. It was in about 2005, 2004. You know, I've already been in since 98, 6 years already. Still got 20 years to go. So when I received the letter, and it was short, the judge said, well, in my experience, witnesses doesn't show up to testify or change their mind, and blah, blah, blah. At the end, she's like, I don't really think that this needs an evidentiary hearing. So therefore, for these reasons, motion denied. You know, the denied part is in bold black letters. So when I seen it, for that brief moment, you know, what kept me going to that point was the hope that I was going to get back to court, that I was going to be able to fight my case again, and the hope that I didn't have to do every day of my bid. But when I got that letter, that was the first time that I was resigned to my fate, that I accepted that, yeah, I'm going to be here for the next 2+ decades. And just that thought, like at that moment, like I couldn't breathe. And everything got dark. You know, my eyes open. I'm sitting there with the letter in my hand, but I couldn't breathe. And it felt like somebody was like bear hugging me. Like I just felt like compressed. And I didn't know what it was because I've never, through the course of my time, experienced such a sense of hopelessness. And I'm just a young kid now, just at this moment, coming to terms with my future. And my future is going to be 2+ decades in this environment where people are getting chopped up. If not every day, every single week, someone's getting chopped up. You know, where every decision you make, whether you do it for the right reason or the wrong reason, could potentially cost you your life. And I had that dark thought that maybe it's better if I spare myself this next 2 decades of this environment. And when I got to that point, I got angry. I got mad. Mad that this fucking bitch has broke me down to the point where I'm contemplating these dark thoughts. And at that time, what saved my life was my anger, my frustration, my determination to make it back here this day, be here, right here, so that somehow, some way, I can do something. You know, at that time, my thought wasn't like properly formulated. My anger was just, I just wanted to come back out here, not to do any good for my community or anybody else, but just to be here to show these bitch motherfuckers that you didn't break me and that you're not gonna break me. And that's what I harnessed, that's what I held on to for the next 20 years. And it's a fucked up way to live, you know, letting your anger and your hatred be the energy that keeps you alive, that motivates you. You know, some people, I heard saying that there's 2 types of pain. There's pain that uses you, and then there's pain that you use. You know, in my predicament, I use that pain to shield me, to shield my mind, to allow me to do what was necessary to survive and make it back home. You know. So my friend, Rick Turner, he grew up in a middle-class family. I mean, a well-to-do family. But, you know, no matter what income class you come out of, every family has their issues. One of his issues was an abusive dad. I don't know the details and all that, but he gravitated towards more with his mom. You know, his mom worked 2 jobs. She got her master's degree, went into the medical field or healthcare field, and he followed her into there. Never been in trouble when he was a kid. You know, I'm sure he probably dipped and dabbed with some drugs or alcohol along the way or anything, but he was never arrested, never got in trouble. And the thing that led him to being in Florence was just a cumulative of certain things that happened in his life in such a short span. His mom ended up getting sick. You know, she was on her deathbed dying of cancer. And while that was going on, he had a nephew that worked for the Salt Lake PD. That was a patrolman, a police. And his nephew on this particular day was setting out spikes to stop a few teens that had stole a car. While his nephew was in the middle of the road setting up the spike to stop this car, those kids hit him, ran him over, and killed him. This is Rick's nephew. I think his name is Cody. He was only like 26. So from that incident, you know, Cody is Rick's nephew, but it was like his best friend. You know, I think they were maybe 10 years apart, but he was really close with that kid. So when he died, you know, it broke his heart and shattered his mind. And on top of that, his mother passed away from cancer. So that led him into a dark place where he started self-medicating with methamphetamine. Now the reason that I'm sharing you Rick Turner's story is basically to show you the discrepancy in sentencing, to show you that the prosecutors, the judge, are not really interested in the truth or doing the right thing or giving somebody a fair sentence according to their crime and whatnot. People go to prison. I'm telling you right now, people that end up in federal prison or any prison is not primarily dependent on their crime. Most of the people that go to prison is because they refuse to cooperate and give somebody else up, put them in their place. Rick was a low-level dude. He got caught selling to an undercover cop 150 ounces of methamphetamine, which is less than 2 ounces. But with the dope, there was a gun.
You just said 50 ounces.
50 grams. 50 grams.
Start over.
Yeah, never mind. He was caught selling 50 grams of methamphetamine, which is equivalent to less than 2 ounces. But with it, he had a gun. So somehow they enhanced his sentencing, combined with the minimum mandatory, he ended up with a 40-year sentence. Nonviolent first-time offender, 40-year sentence. Now, his boss, the guy he was working for, his name was Raman, whatever. He's the ringleader. This is the dude that the FBI or drug task force or whatever was trying to get. They were doing a sting operation on this dude. Everybody gets arrested. The ringleader, this dude that's been in this lifestyle, that present himself like he's a thug, some type of gangster, end up turning state evidence on Rick. Drug leader, gang leader, got 16-year sentence, while my friend Rick, first-time nonviolent drug offender, received 40 years. There's no way that anybody can meet this person, and I'm talking about Rick Turner, and think or come away with the impression that he's anything other than a goofy, kind-hearted dude. This guy never pretended to be some type of gangster, never pretended to be tough or anything like that. But the prosecutor said that he was a leader of a blood gang, nicknamed Mick Jagger. Again, if you run into my friend Rick Turner, you would know that this doesn't coincide. But the prosecutor is writing up about him, and the person that I'm having a conversation with is not the same person. Now, that's not to say that he wasn't like what's that movie? The Usual Suspect? What's that character in that movie? Anyway, the cartel leader or whatever that played like he was the one that played like he was a handicap, and at the end he was really the man. Rick is not that. He's not fooling anybody to thinking that he's some hardcore gangster and then presenting a little nerdy, goofy personality. No, he's that nerdy, goofy personality. And the reason that me and him became friends, one of the reasons that I took a liking to him was because of his honesty and sincerity. When I first met him, I met him because he's from Utah. Anybody that comes through that door, that hits the yard, that is from Utah, once they find out they're from Utah, the people's like, oh yeah, you got other homies that are out here from Utah. And they introduce him to other people that's from where they're at. And so I got introduced to him because he was from Utah. And he lived out here, so of course, I'm trying to catch up on the news out here back at home on how the city looks, after 20 years and all that stuff. And one of the questions that I asked him was like, when I first met him, it's like, so, how are you feeling? And this was the most honest answer that I've ever heard from anybody. He looked at me right in the face, looked at me in my eyes, and with, somber tone, he said, I'm terrified of death. When I asked him, how are you feeling? He said, I'm terrified to death. Now, at the time, I just started laughing, when he said, hey, I'm terrified of death. I was like, oh, I'm laughing, for a couple seconds. And then I looked at him and I realized, he's serious. This man is dead serious that he's terrified to death of being here. So from there, I got a chance to get to know him through the course of our conversation and learn about his history. When he got sentenced, he thought he was going to a camp. The prosecutor, the judge, everybody told him not to worry, that he's going to be going to a camp. He's a nonviolent offender, and that, after he can file his appeal and they'll readdress the issue. His sister at this time, when we came to Florence, was running back and forth up to Capitol Hill, trying to get senators and stuff to look at his case, just showing them like, how does this dude deserve 40 years? He's never hurt nobody. He's never been in trouble, and whatever. But he thought he was going to an FCI, and he was relaying the story to us. He's like, yeah, they told me I was going to a camp, and they don't even have a camp, don't even have a fence around the facility. It has 2 yellow lines marked around the facility that you're not supposed to cross during certain hours. But those people in camp, like when I left the prison, the person that picked me up to drive me to the gate was from the camp. They'll take you out to drop you off at the bus station, or some of them have work details that they can go and work and have a job in the community, but come back home. Not home, but come back to the facility and lock in for the night. So when he's on the bus pulls up to the camp first. So he's like, oh yeah, this is my spot right here. This is my spot. So they start calling names and stuff to get off the bus. And when they were done, his name wasn't mentioned. So he's like, damn. All right, maybe I don't go to the camp. Well, I guess I'm going to an FCI. So the bus turns around and heads to the FCI. Again, he's in the bus. They're calling names. People are getting off the bus. And by the time they were done calling the roll call, his name wasn't mentioned. So he was like, well, there's only one other spot, and that's the USP. And anybody that's fighting their case, fighting any federal case, you're gonna be around people that has been to the prisons, has been to the USP, and you're gonna hear stories about it. So he's already heard stories about the USP, just prison in general. So when they're finished calling his name, they're everybody's name, and his name wasn't one of them, he started to get worried. So the bus continued, went down the road, and turned into the USP. Now, when he got into the USP parking, his mind was like, there's no way they're sending me to the USP. I'm not a violent offender. I've never been in trouble. As far as I know, the USP is reserved for violent, crazy people, right? There's no way that they're putting me over here. It's like, it must be a mistake. And in his mind, he's thinking that the bus is gonna turn around and go make another trip through the FCI and camp, But to his astonishment, it wasn't so. When they did the roll call, his name is one of the names they called to get off the bus to come and get booked into the USP. So when he got off, you know, his mind didn't know how to understand it, because the stories that he've heard about the USP and now actually being here, it fucked him up. You know, again, I'm going to continue on with this story with my friend Rick Turner, because I want to emphasize you what the criminal justice is really about. But the reason I'm choosing to emphasize his story is because he's white. He's a white person, a white man that came from a well-to-do family that's never been in trouble, and the justice system fucked him over. But my point is that the justice system has been fucking everybody else's over. But when a person like me gets on top of the mountain and scream foul, no one's gonna listen. They're just gonna look at me and see my history and say, oh, he's nothing but a thug, a freaking gangbanger. Why is he crying about a 30-year sentence? He deserves it. He probably deserves it. Well, now you got this white man that's never been in trouble, got a 40-year sentence, first-time offender. Now and I'm not trying to be racist or anything when I say these, but now the well-to-do, upper-class white families, white neighborhoods see that the problem is starting to spill over onto their streets, that their kids, the people that they know, are now being scrutinized with these federal laws and sentencing. So now, all of a sudden, there's a big injustice. For me, I don't care who cries about it and get heard. But the point is, right now, it's being heard. So, for my part, I want to push it and show you exactly how the BOP works, how the federal criminal justice system works. And you're not going to like it. Welcome to the USP.